like to call this meeting of the Rockingham County School Board for November the 23rd of 2020 to order. First order of business is to approve this evening's operating agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Thank you, Mr. Breeden. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Lohr. Is there any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, please cast your vote. The motion passes unanimously. We have an agenda to operate from. Next item is Pledge of Allegiance. Please, ladies and gentlemen, join me in pledging allegiance to our flag. Thank you. Please join in a moment of silence. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is public comments. You had a sign-up sheet as you were coming in, and no one signed up this evening to speak, at least to this point. Do we have any online comments, Dr. Sheckler?
We do. So as we have in the past, we have offered a form to the public where public comments could be entered. And so I will read those here. The first comment is from one of our teachers. I do have the name, but she has asked me not to read the name for a specific reason, because she mentions about that a student in her class tested positive. So that's to protect the information of someone with a health issue, and so we're not going to publicly read the name, but it is on record here. On Monday, November 16th, students returned to my classroom. Nothing gave me greater joy than to see their smiling eyes light up what had previously been an empty, lonely room. Teaching had lost most of its reward without being in the presence of our greatest gift, our students. Within the first week, I found out that I had already spent 90 minutes in my room with an active COVID case. With Thanksgiving right around the corner, it is important to me that I get tested to protect my loved ones. However, taking a COVID test would have required me to quarantine until I received results. So as to not leave my school and my students without a teacher on Monday and Tuesday, I'm considering spending Thanksgiving on my own this year. It is a sacrifice that I was prepared to make, and one that I recognize many others in our community are making for their own reasons. With Christmas a month away, and to avoid a similar situation, I ask you to please consider altering the calendar to make Monday, December 21st, and Tuesday, December 22nd, countywide virtual learning days. I do not see the benefit of bringing students into schools for one more day prior to the holiday break, when they could instead get a 3 to 4 day head start on testing and quarantining to better protect their loved ones and our community. The sooner you make this decision, the sooner families can secure childcare as needed, and the sooner schools can come up with a plan to continue feeding students on those dates where there is need. If you choose to have us go in on that Monday and Tuesday, hopefully you will share with us why you believe attending in-person school those 2 days is essential to student learning and safety. Thank you for your consideration. I wish you all a quiet and restful Thanksgiving week. Thank you for your leadership and care during an impossibly complicated time. The second comment is from Brooke Neal Tate. Please consider a quarantine period after Thanksgiving and Christmas break for students and staff. I'm very concerned about the number of community members and students who still have plans to gather with families during the break. Putting the health of your staff, students, and community first is crucial to fighting this pandemic. Thank you for your time and consideration. And that was the second and last comment that was submitted online.
Thank you, Dr. Scheichel. At this time, is there anyone who hasn't signed up who would like to make comments before the board? All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is board member comments, highlights by board members. I will start on my right with Ms. Lohr.
Thank you. I would like to, I'm thrilled to talk about the grants, the Ag in the Classroom grants that 3 of our schools received. East Rock High School received one for an outdoor garden, hydroponic system, and a compost bin. Spotswood High School received one for the greenhouse farm-to-table project that they're working on, and J. Frank Hilliard received one for a cut flower garden. All of them are in the amount of $500, and I'm sure those teachers will put that to good use. And I guess our next big highlight is Thanksgiving. I hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving holiday and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. McQuilkin.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. I would like to also second Ms. Lohr's Thanksgiving wishes for everybody. And I'm thrilled that our students have been able to come back to school. And I understand that they're following the mitigation strategies. And we are grateful for everybody working together so that we maintain a safe environment for our students. Thank you, Mr. Falk.
Thank you. Mr. Breeden.
I just continue to thank everyone for the extraordinary effort that's being put forward. As I deal with my grandson's teachers, I am just daily impressed by the way that they are handling this difficult circumstance. He is a high schooler, so he's still totally virtual, but thank you to all of those teachers, staff, parents, everybody that are just, you know, we talked several weeks ago about grace, and I really see a lot of that being exhibited right now, and I'm just thankful for it.
Thank you, Mr. Breeden. Ms. Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. I would say I'm absolutely thankful for all the things that my fellow board members have, and also for our partnership with the Board of Supervisors, who will allow us to provide some much-needed help for our teaching staff and our classified personnel that we hadn't really expected. And so we're all going to hang in there together. And we really value our partnership with them and our continued work with them, and appreciate how they always think about the schools and what our needs are as they consider and think about their budget too. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Dr. Scheichel.
Yeah, my highlight was visiting schools again last week, of course, at the elementary level. You know, our 2nd through 5th graders coming back, and then at the middle schools as well, and just walking through the buildings and talking to teachers. The feedback from teachers who now had students back in the classroom, and you know, when you have about 40% of the students in a building, it's hard to imagine what that looks like. And then many said, you know, they're so excited that the kids are back, that the school is emptier than they thought it would be, and that really does allow for implementation of the mitigation strategies. And as you'll hear later in my presentation, that is simply becoming the one key to keeping our schools open. And so today, the first thing in the morning before I was on the phone with other superintendents and the Virginia Department of Health, Eric Fitzgerald, our CT director, came in and was just smiling all over and said, you know, he just came from John Wayland Elementary School, and to just how impressed he was with our young students and how much they contribute to that success, you know, being able to do the things that many thought they could never do. I remember, you know, when we heard about good luck, you know, getting the youngest kids in kindergarten or first grade to wear masks, and they are. And so as long as we can continue that, we'll be in a good spot. And just to hear that and to see it in person was really refreshing. And you saw even in the comment, you know, from the teacher this evening that teachers are committed to doing this when it can be done safely. And again, that's what we're committed to. And so it's just a highlight to see everyone contribute to that, including the community, and getting the kids on the bus with their masks.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, as we move into the action items, is we have to approve minutes from our last meeting. May I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
I move we approve the minutes of the November 9th meeting as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Lohr. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion that someone would like to have about the minutes from the last meeting? Hearing none, all in favor, please cast your vote. Please cast your vote. Passes unanimously. CTE Joint Advisory Council, Eric Fitzgerald.
Good evening, Chairman Falk, school board members, Dr. Scheichel. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and I do have to follow up on what Dr. Scheichel said about John Wayland. Honestly, after I went there the other day on Friday, ate lunch with a couple classrooms of kids, I think that may be one of the safest places I've been to since March. I'll tell you what, the kids were all doing exactly what we thought they should be doing, and they were excited to be back. It was a joyful day. It really was. Hey, tonight as an action item, I bring to you a list of nominations for the joint Rockingham-Harrisburg Massanutten Technical Center CTE Advisory Committee. This committee meets twice a year to validate CTE curriculum, identify program needs, review labor data, current data for our area, and then to also, in the spring, approve our local plan, our budget for our local plan that funds programs with equipment, or funds a lot of our equipment for programs for the next year. You have in your folder a copy of the proposed nominees for this committee, and tonight I ask for your action to approve this committee. Do you have any questions?
Board members, do you have any questions for Mr. Fitzgerald?
I do recommend approval of the committee as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Scheichel. We have a recommendation by the superintendent. May I have a motion?
I move that we accept the recommendation, the superintendent's recommendation regarding the CTE Joint Advisory Council.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. It's been moved. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Breeden. Any further discussion or any other questions? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice Thanksgiving. Budget amendment for federal coronavirus relief funds. Ms. Mast.
Chairman Falk, members of the board, and Dr. Scheichel, for your approval this evening is an amendment that will appropriate additional funds that we received from the Federal Coronavirus Relief Fund. These funds are being used on expenses that we have incurred as a result of the coronavirus. The amount that Rockingham received was $1,999,865.
I do recommend approval of the budget amendment as presented. This is necessary since those funds have to be appropriated by the county, and so they are revenue and expenses, and so this budget amendment takes care of that. And thanks to Ms. Mast for all the work that almost seems like it's in addition to all her work on the health and safety plan. And so I know she's excited that she can do budget work and actually work in her original area of expertise now that she's become the expert in another area that we all hope we didn't have to deal with right now.
We have a recommendation by the superintendent. May I have a motion?
I move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Breeden. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Dr. McQuilkin, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Do you have any questions for Ms. Mast? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Mast. Information items. Dr. Scheichel.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. I think I'll just keep my mic so. As we've done during the last few board meetings, I want to provide a health data update and an update about our reopening and where we are in terms of communication with other agencies and what we see across the state right now. So like last time, I said school reopening plans are changing. This is currently how schools are open. We are on a partial hybrid schedule, as you can see. That's kind of a number of school divisions are following that. You still see that some are fully remote and all the way to a few that are in person. Since that was updated about a week and a half ago, there are sometimes changes based on local health data and what the recommendations are in different school divisions, but you can see that in Virginia it's not consistent, and so school divisions operate in all kinds of modes. And when we look at the cases per 100,000 population, there's certainly a significant change since last time. So community spread in Virginia has increased significantly. And so you can see that there are mostly red and orange localities. There is one exception, and I'll come back to that again in a little bit, and that is Highland County. Highland County is in yellow. When we look at the cases that we've seen in Rockingham County, still this is available online, and I've received a number of emails that say, you're sending us the letters for the cases that are in a building, so someone tests positive, and without knowing who that is, we really can't do a whole lot with that. You can hear me a little bit better. And so the reason for that is that we have to protect the identity of individuals' health information. We simply cannot say this was a student in this classroom because the number of students that could possibly be is now all of a sudden very limited, and you could identify people and their health condition. The reason that the letters are sent are simply to let the community know that someone associated with the building tested positive or was diagnosed. In some cases, the person may not even have been in the building while they were contagious. So they're associated with the building, so we sent, if in doubt, we sent a notification. And so what this really means is that we have staff or students who test positive, and we have not, since we brought students back in September, we really haven't had any cases where that positive test was a result of contracting the virus that causes COVID-19 in the school building. And that's really a key piece to us. So, we may have had up to 50 positive cases in the school division over time. we've had, I believe, 14 cases where someone met the definition of being exposed, which means they're within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more, or there's closer contact. For example, if someone sneezes on you, you know, that's immediately, you know, the definition of exposure. And then we conduct contact tracing, as does the Virginia Department of Health, and that's important to understand. So there are two, there's 2 times that the contact tracing then takes place. And what I can also report is that in those 14 cases where someone was exposed, they met the definition of exposure. However, the wearing of masks, even though in the definition doesn't factor in, the CDC's definition, it's regardless of whether someone wore a mask or not. We now know from more research and from CDC guidance that masks are critical. In fact, probably the most important mitigation strategy that we have. And with both, you know, in that exposure, with both wearing a mask, that is the most likely reason why we've not had a single case where we have confirmed or even suspected a transmission in the building. And that's really important, because that comes in again later when we talk about, you know, why we feel that having students in the building is safe. But it also points to what's really important. So without masks and without those mitigation strategies, you know, you run the risk of now becoming a participant and a contributor to community spread. And based on the, you know, numbers you saw here, that's certainly the last thing we want to do, right? Right now, schools are mostly a reflection of the community, and if spread is increasing in the community, we will see more cases in schools. But what's important from our perspective is, does that lead to others getting sick? And so up to this point, we have not seen that, and we've had students back since September 10th, so for quite a while. The context of this, again, in my conversations with the Virginia Department of Health, the key drivers of community spread, long-term care facilities, but then social gatherings. We can't do much about long-term care facilities if you know, it can spread quickly, especially if mitigation isn't ideal. But then social gatherings. This is the reason why Governor Northam changed the executive order and limited the number of people that can be in a social gathering. And some feel that it should be lower than 25, but 25 is where it currently is. But social gatherings are the key driver right now. There are additional cases, you know, through sports and so on, but this is, you know, where we're seeing the spread. It is not driven by schools. However, there's always that caveat that this is only true for schools if those mitigation strategies are in place, so the successful and consistent use of physical distancing, consistent and correct use of masks, hand hygiene, respiratory etiquette, so sneezing into your elbow if you don't happen to wear a mask, you know, cleaning, disinfecting, contact tracing with VDH, and proper ventilation. So the respiratory etiquette, you know, that's really for away from school, because at school we would expect everyone to have their mask on, so no one should be sneezing into their elbow in the first place. I talked about this a number of times, and this is a repeat of the slide I showed last time. Countries in Europe that we used originally as examples on how something can be done about this pandemic, and they were successfully reopening schools. You know, schools came back despite the fact that there was still community spread, but they lowered the numbers sufficiently. And on the right-hand side, now we saw what happened once the other restrictions came off. So social gatherings, concerts, bars, and all the other areas where people congregate without masks. And in Europe, it is not a pretty picture right now. So countries are in complete lockdown again, one after the other, because of uncontrolled spread. And again, the last place that they shut down were schools, because they saw the same thing. The schools reflected the community, but the benefits for students were there, and as long as they could prevent schools from actually being the drivers of that spread, they kept schools open. But a number of those countries are on lockdown again. And so schools can reopen, but only if we use the mitigation strategy and use them correctly. And I will be honest, I said this last time, you know, if the disease spread gets out of control, we have no choice but to shut schools down again. And we don't want that, because we want the kids in the buildings. That's where they have the best a chance to work with the caring adults in our buildings and to learn in person. That's the best place for most kids, and that's recognized by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And what really drives me crazy is when I look at the news or I look on social media and simply see misinformation spread about every part of this. And I will say this over and over, be careful what you post on social media about this. Unless you've read the underlying study, please don't just post headlines. I've seen headlines that say things like, 3 teachers died within a week of school reopening from COVID. Everyone who sees that headline thinks, oh my goodness, they got COVID at school and they died. All 3 cases in that news article were acquired elsewhere. They had nothing to do with school. So there were 3 teachers who died of COVID, but the 2 pieces weren't related. They were infected at a social gathering or elsewhere, and they died, and they were teachers. So we have to be very careful because it creates a false image right away. On the other end, I saw something where a former executive or a scientific advisor at one of the companies that's manufacturing vaccines said the death rates haven't increased in this second wave. And so this is all just fake. It's the same misinformation. It's on the other end. Here are the same 4 countries that I mentioned earlier. So you have Austria, Belgium, France, and Germany, and you can see that for a long time after this first wave, the death rate was really low, deaths over the last 7 days. And the reason is treatments have improved, and we just know better what not to do in terms of when we have patients, that are in the hospital. And we also, have done a better job mitigating. But look at the right-hand side. That's the last few weeks. So no one can tell me that deaths haven't increased. And if you look at the United States on the far right-hand side, you can see the waves, right? There are these extreme ups and downs, but they seem to be related more to reporting. If you look at the dates, they're mostly weekends, so Saturday and a Sunday, it goes down, and then you have the reporting again during the week. And so, but you can see the waves coming, and what we don't want to see is something like the top left-hand side. So that's where my family still lives, my brother and my mom, and nothing's going on there. So they just locked down again last week because of everything going sideways, right? And so this is real, and we can see it everywhere. And those countries aren't tied to the election in the United States. So that whole argument about how it's all about the election, the Austrians don't, let people get sick because of the U.S. election. And neither do the French, the Germans. So this is something we see across the world, so we have to be careful. But they showed for a long time until they reopened all the social gatherings, they had schools open and they didn't see issues with it because they followed the mitigation strategies, right? So on the other side, I see a lot of posts about how schools are really spreading this because we see more and more cases in schools. But when you look at it, it is when mitigation strategies are not in place. The CDC did change the guidance for schools just recently again, but they focus on the same thing that we're always talking about, right? So they're talking about there's a continuum of risk. Of course it is safer if everyone were at home. They are less likely to contract COVID. However, if we were to close schools in our environment, we wouldn't see students and their families all sheltering at home. That's why these school closings are successful when they're done in coordination with the entire community. What we would see is students in childcare, what we would see is students in groups, and doing all the things that are actually less safe than what they do at school. And so when the CDC talks about the guidance for schools, they say, in general, the risk of spread in schools increases when you go from virtual learning to in-person learning. Sure, if there's no one in the building, no one's gonna get it in the building. That's a simple statement, right? However, it says with the risk moderated for hybrid and in-person learning based upon the range of mitigation strategies put in place and the extent they are conscientiously followed. So that's the new guidance. It says the same thing we've been talking about. Have the mitigation strategies in place, follow them, and that moderates the risk. And then you get all the benefits of in-person learning because in that statement, the CDC on that page also says that it's best for students to be physically present in school. So that's what you have to balance. And that's why it's so important that we have these strategies in place. And our community, as much as people have originally said either it's not possible or complained about it, we've seen people live up to it. If that's what it takes to get the kids to school, we've seen them do it. And that's what makes me proud to be here and look at the kids really following these. And that's why we've been pretty successful with it and hope to continue to do that. So again, here we see the cases per population. Now, what have we recently seen? So over the weekend, we received 2 emails from the regional VDH director cautioning about school sports and cautioning attendance in person in schools, especially when mitigation strategies are not in place. I had a long conversation with Dr. Kornegay today, and so she's been available to us. We've talked all the time. So there have been outbreaks related to sports. There have been outbreaks related to basketball. There have been outbreaks related to wrestling, many outside of school, but those sports by nature involve close contact, and so there's a concern about that. Region 6, which is the southwest of Virginia, you can see it's all red. The entire region put a rule in place that says a contest will only be allowed to take place if neither of the school divisions is in red or orange. If that were a statewide rule, as you can see, like I said earlier, Highland County is in yellow. It's the only school division in Virginia that currently, under those rules, would be allowed to play sports. Now, Highland County has a total student population of 200. Okay, so if that tells you how many games would be taking place, none, right? So there will be conversations about this. There will be conversations about this. The VHSL is a business. They're not going to issue a statement that says we can't play sports until they are forced to do so. But regions are looking at this information and will decide, what the limits are. When can we justify a wrestling match to take place when we say you can only come to school in person if you follow the mitigation strategies, and that means 6 feet apart and with masks on, right? A wrestling match instantly meets the definition of close contact, right? As does basketball because of the time of exposure. So we have to be very, very careful. But there haven't been any decisions about that. But VDH has started to caution us to be very careful with sports, and so there are lots of conversations going on across the state, and many regions will try to decide to have a data-based approach to this. Right? Outbreaks related to the lack of mitigation strategies. So when I talked to Dr. Kornegay this afternoon, she said, my biggest concern is that we see masks just not being worn in school, that staff take their masks off, that students take their masks off. And on Friday, we actually had a news story where an image was shown of a teacher. It was from a different school district back in August, but immediately I got feedback from the public saying, well, what about that teacher, right? And I could respond saying, that's not Rockingham, right? And so it's really important to know that that is one of the keys, right? Holiday gatherings. We've talked about Thanksgiving. We've talked about the holidays coming after that, and all the families getting together. VDH is correct that there's concern about numbers spiking afterwards. And so we have to be very, very careful, right? We have to be very careful in terms of now having gatherings that are large with people that we don't normally have around us because we don't know the level of asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic spread. Contact tracing as a result, as the numbers go up, it becomes more and more difficult to trace the contact. So in some of those European countries, they're down to about 20% of the cases they can actually explain, right? And now you're at a loss of what's even going on. And that's, when that happens, it happens quickly. And so we have to be very careful. And if people think this doesn't affect hospitals, I want to talk to Dr. Kornegay today. In our region, patients have to be diverted already. Augusta Medical is running into capacity issues, and other hospitals have had to divert patients because they're out of ICU beds. So if people think this is not happening, the healthcare situation can go sideways pretty quickly. In El Paso, I think I saw a picture today, so where they have the trucks because the morgues can't handle all the bodies anymore. So let's be careful, and that's why I keep saying the same thing. We will be asked And in fact, Dr. Kornegay said, in her first email this morning, that VDH says we should consider if to go virtual. And in my follow-up conversation, she said, if you can't keep the mitigation strategies up, then you're not going to be successful, right? That is the key. That's the key to her. That's the key to VDH guidance, and that's the key for us. But what that means is we can control it. If we want our students physically in the buildings, the mitigation strategies are key, and we can control it. We can control how many people we have at family gatherings. We can control the wearing of masks and the distancing, and it's not a joke. So the recommendations are there. Avoid travel when possible. Avoid gatherings that don't involve family members that you usually spend time with, and wear your mask. Wear your mask, and it's really great to see now that practically every store that we go into, people are following that. And so we'll see the effect of that down the road, but unless we do that, we will be back where we simply have no other option than to go back to a virtual mode of instruction, and no one wants to see that. We don't want to see that, and families don't want to see that. If everyone follows these strategies and we can continue, then for second semester, like we said, high schools will return in person to an AB blended schedule. Of course, families will still have the choice to keep the kids at home, but we will return to that blended schedule, and it's important for families to understand how that's different from what students are doing now. Teachers will teach half the group on A day, half a group on B day. So that means teacher will be available to that student, in person 2 days a week, right? And on the other days, students will learn at home, and the teacher's teaching the other half. So that's important for families to understand that they will be with the teacher 2 days a week. And later this week, we will send out a survey to families to get a sense of what their preference is, whether they want to come to that AB blended schedule in person or remain in a virtual environment, because high schools will have to schedule families accordingly. I'll also report that we had conversations about the need for additional bus drivers. One of the reasons it's tough to get everyone to school is if we don't have enough bus drivers. And so in conversations with DMV, they agreed to have a number of options available to us. One could be that drivers can get to DMV early in the morning before the public gets access to testing. But another option also is that we become a third-party testing site, so we can actually conduct the knowledge tests. And so DMV has been very helpful there, and as a result, we should have additional bus drivers available in the spring. Any questions?
Any questions for the superintendent? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'd like to call on Beth Harder. Thankful for the arts.
Good evening, Chair Folt, members of the board, Dr. Scheichel. It is a thrill to be standing here in front of you tonight. It's been a little too long, and so it's time to catch you up on all the wonderful things going on in the arts. Before I show our presentation, I do want to say thank you to you all for your service to our students and our schools, because I can't imagine the job you've had for the past year and a half. And I think I can speak for myself as well as a lot of other people just to say thank you for everything you do. Thank you so much. It's been a rough road for all of us to navigate, but I continue to be humbled by the talents of our fine arts teachers and the extent to what they go and provide for their students so that they can continue to have arts activities in their lives. So without me talking anymore, there's going to be some slides where you're going to need to read, and some where you just looked. I have examples of artwork, some parent comments from emails, teacher comments, student comments, and just a bunch of artwork and information for us. So it's a feel good about the arts night, okay? All right, which one do I push? Big button? Okay. What a hopefully all of you can see this. I'm not going to read it to you. I'll just give you a second to look at it. So what teacher wouldn't love to get an email like that from a parent? You know, what am I supposed to do? Oh, you can't hear me. Oh. Okay. I have such a megaphone mouth anyhow. It's just an example of making music at Mountain View Elementary. Jo Anke, the music teacher there, spent her summer preparing every child in her pre-K, K-1 class a bucket of instruments. She made egg shakers, she made scars for her kids, she made sure they all had sticks. I spent the other week a morning with her. I could barely keep up with the woman. I have never seen anybody with so much energy in my life. I was exhausted when I got to my car, literally. But these are the kinds of teachers we have. And I mean, look at the little masks and everything. I just love it. They're fabulous. The elementary schools have been wonderful. All of our elementary teachers are on CART, as you know, our elementary art and music. They're pushing into all classrooms now, pre-K through 5, most of them. That's Miss Robin Goebel. And our elementary folks have had to prepare lessons for a home learning academy, as well as 2 through 5 virtual lessons, as well as teach in person. And it's been quite a burden for them, but they've all risen to the occasion. And also giving feedback through Seesaw to their students on their works of art and also their music lessons. So I love that this is a student of Robin's that she taught the parents of as well. A couple more examples of some second grade artwork. They just tickle me. You can't help but love it.
The hedgehog.
This is an example. Not only are our students creative, our art teachers and music teachers are very creative in what they do. And this is the beginning of the virtual lessons by our 5th grade art teacher. Do I push that to play, Kevin, or do you?
Hello 5th grade and welcome back for our final art video lesson. Next week, art is going to look a little bit different. I will explain more about that at the end of the video. Today we are looking at an artist. His name is Gustav Klimt, and we're going to be creating an artwork that is based off of and inspired by his artwork. This is Gustav Klimt. He grew up in Austria. He studied art professionally there. He lived in Vienna for much of his life. He was a significant member of the
Comments about ending her virtual lessons. And Jennifer teaches at John Wayland. It's her first year there. So 88% participation, then it's pretty good for virtual teaching. Here's some examples of some of our high school work. This is some examples from East Rockingham that's been taking place this fall. The next 3 works that I'm going to show you are from Erin Wetzel's collection from Turner Ashby High School. And she wrote the interactions with her students that you'll be reading here. Outlets.
through the arts. I love the picture of the kid drinking the soda with the chips and the donuts there. I think that's pretty true for a lot of our students. I think it explains itself there, doesn't it? Thank goodness she has this as an outlet. Thank goodness. It just, it amazes me how creative these kids can be. Very good. I don't want to rush through it, but this one this is all photography. It was presented for her AP 2D design. It took me a while to figure all that out, but she was messing around with light and trying to use like an artificial light source, but then she figured out she had to use a real light source to get that kind of an image in photography. On the 24th of October, we had a marching band showcase. Wasn't exactly like any other year, and it wasn't a competition, but our band directors felt very strongly that our students needed to perform in front of each other. It was a great day. Some of them wore t-shirts. That's East Rock in their new uniforms. Cheryl had to make sure you saw that, okay? He said they were going to wear those new uniforms no matter what. So, but it was a wonderful afternoon, and the students were interviewed, and they all clapped and cheered for each other. It was great. And I loved it. When I walked into the stadium, this is what I saw. I love the hand sanitizer on the music stands, you know. This just tickled me. And of course, Becky Ford, who teaches marching band, had these thoughts about the band season. I'm going to let you read that. You can't help but love it. I'm awful, aren't I? I'm so proud of these teachers, what they do. A couple examples from J. Frank Hilliard, Sarah Beth Taylor, the art teacher there. I mean, those are just amazing to me. And those are all photographs, you know, that are sent in through Schoology as well. And some more Hilliard artwork. Another email. And we can't leave out those theater people. Spotswood High School and Turner Ashby High School all created virtual one-act plays this fall. This one won several accolades at the virtual competition in October. They presented a play called The Unimaginable, and it was written by Justine Mackey, the theater teacher at Spotswood High School, and she directed it as well. And she said she wrote it over the summer. I was like, I'll just whip out a play during the summer next year, I guess. So, you know, really proud of Spotswood High School and for them providing that opportunity. This is Turner Ashby's. Of course, they filmed on the loading dock, which I thought was kind of creative. Outside, safe. They won a superior rating. And I think TA is hosting one-act play competition at the end of January, if all works out for that this year. And by the way, they are working on musicals right now, too. Virginia Music Honors Choir, auditions are taking place right now. Kids are sending in their tapes, and Rob Nash had a student make Senior Regional Orchestra. The Senior Regional Orchestra didn't take place, but hopefully All-State will take place sometime in April if we can get our kids together. And Audrey Sellers is quite a student. She's a singer, she's an actress, and she's an amazing musician as well. And some words from a Spotswood High School singer to Mr. May. I'll let you look at that and read through that. And before I go to the next slide, I do want to say Turner Ashby is in the middle of their musical rehearsals right now, and they will start filming their musical after Thanksgiving. It will be a completely virtual show, and they will sell tickets and everything, and it'll be a streamed show. They're doing Freaky Friday. Spotswood right now is in the middle of rehearsing Chicago. They don't have a license right now to be able to film it and record it, but they can stream it though live. So it can be streamed live, but they can't record it. I think that's where we are right now with them. Broadway High School's presenting small vignettes of Jack Tales this year, and they're in rehearsals right now too. And of course they're following all social distancing, wearing masks. I mean, we have really strict, everybody has to follow pretty good rules and regs on singing distances and playing instrument distances. And I also want to say, no way could any of the band stuff have happened or anything without having some of the CARES Act money by bell covers for our instruments and woodwind covers and special kind of masks that allow them to play. We've had digital pianos purchased so that digital piano class can take place at home because kids didn't have pianos. We have guitars. And really, Cheryl has been so helpful in enabling those types of things to happen. I really appreciate it. So on a final note, Nathan May, as you know, has quite a technology ability compared to me, and probably most of us. And he has put together a piece of music I'd like you to see. So.
Thank you, Beth. I'd like to call on Doug Alderford for policy revisions.
I don't know about you guys. That was pretty awesome.
That was pretty awesome.
Not as awesome as policies. I assure you.
I just said that to Chair Falk, right? I said, what a juxtaposition. We go from this to
There is-
policy revisions.
I mean, that didn't just make my day. That made my year right there, Beth. See if I can gather myself. Chairman Falk, members of the board, Dr. Scheichel, we do have 3 policies for your information this evening. They're all 3 out of the personnel section of the policy manual. I will just make a couple of notes about them. So one, GCG, there's not many revisions, but there's one fairly important one there that I wanted to highlight, that recently, or in the last General Assembly session, there was a change from the probationary period of teachers going from 5 years back to 3 years. So if you've been around a while, which you all have, you know that it used to be 3, and then it went to 5, and now it's going back to 3 again. So that's an adjustment in our policy. Also, another one is, by the way, all 3 of these are going to all the SBA policies, which has been part of our move as well. The other one is we're taking a policy that actually combined 2, we're separating it into 2 different policies. So we're totally removing one, but then essentially breaking it off into 2 different other policies, separate policies. So I'm happy to answer questions if you have them now, or obviously if you want to contact me or Michelle Judd. She reviewed these as well between now and our next meeting, or if you have questions next week as well, that's fine.
Doug, do you know the rationale for moving it back to 3 years from 5 probationary period, where that came from?
I really don't know the reason for that. I don't know, Michelle, are you familiar with why they decided to make that change? Okay, no, I don't know the reason for that.
Okay.
But it is a welcome change, I will say, from our administrator's perspective, just from the amount of observations that are required. So as you may be familiar, for any teacher who's on our probationary contract, there's significantly more formal observations that need to be done for those. So it is a little more difficult for them to be doing that. On the other hand, it does provide a little bit longer period of time for principals to make a decision about whether they want to retain a teacher. What we did find, though, is that typically principals know within 3 years whether a teacher is someone they want to keep on for longer. So it didn't necessarily take those extra couple of years. So that's sort of the practical implications of it.
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
I do want to make just one quick comment about the suspension of staff members and other policies. You know that we've struggled with some policies where the language hasn't been clear. You know, when does a felony apply? When does a misdemeanor apply? So it looks like there's at least an attempt to, clarify that language. So these are welcome.
Larry Shiflett. Revisions to the calendar.
Good evening, Chair Falk, members of the board, and Dr. Scheichel. I come to you tonight with some information for some proposed changes to our school calendar beginning in the second semester. If you will recall, back in August, one of the most significant changes we made was we moved the start date from August the 31st to September the 10th to give teachers some additional time for planning and preparation, and that was very valuable, and I appreciate the board's willingness to do that. But what I would like to propose this evening is, as the calendar currently has been approved, the last day of the first semester is Thursday, January the 28th. And there's one teacher work day then, Friday the 29th, and then the new second semester would start on Monday, February the 1st. And since we are currently on a 4x4 schedule, what that means is when that first semester ends, when the second semester begins, the students will have 4 new classes, but teachers will also have to be prepping for 4 new classes in some cases, right? They may be teaching the same courses but with a new set of students, or it could be a different course. And so I'd like to propose that we would move the end of first semester to Tuesday the 26th, and then allow us to have 3 teacher work days, the 27th, the 28th, and the 29th. Again, the 4x4 is new for us. Typically 1 day is sufficient as a teacher work day in the traditional odd even schedule, because that shift from first semester to second semester is really an opportunity for grading and scoring the exams and so forth. But now we need, I think, provide teachers with some preparation to get ready for some new courses that they may be teaching in the second semester that they're not currently teaching this semester. And again, that depends on the teacher and their course load and what they're working with. And as well, I'd also like to propose that there were some early release days, I think February the 12th and March the 5th, for some professional development. I just feel like if we can get back in school, the more days we can be in school for full days, I think the better off we would be in the second semester doing that. And there was also a morning delay, April 30th. I would like to just propose that we just make that a full day as well. So I provided you a copy of the proposed revisions, and I welcome any questions about these changes.
Board members, do you have any questions for Dr. Shiflett?
So Dr. Shiflett, we did hear some feedback about swapping out the 21st and 22nd of December for the 27th and 28th in January. And I actually got feedback from some teachers about that also. So what would that do if we did that switch?
Well, so if we traded those 2 days, I would be fearful that we would only have 1 day for teachers
correct.
then to prepare. So let's say you were teaching English 10 honors, and now next semester you're just teaching English 10, or maybe, whatever the situation. Right now you have just 1 day of prep time. So I think the 2 days in December is not going to really help you for the semester switch, because right now, we'll be still building schedules probably, into January with the new semester. Between November the 16th and the end of school, students are only going to be in school for 51 days. I'm kind of reluctant to give up on any of those days, knowing how beneficial they are for students' learning. If you're looking to quarantine, you need 14 days. I'm not sure those 2 days coupled with the weekend would give you sufficient time to quarantine before visiting family over the holidays. So I don't know if that trade-off would be warranted, but I'm open to the board's desires with that. I'm just here bringing some recommendations, I think, to try to help teachers as they get ready for second semester.
Yeah, Ms. Reed, I think the comment from, during public comments was well taken. I think what the teacher is referring to is the fact that when you get a COVID test, your PCR test, where get the swab, and that can have a 2-day turnaround, maybe 3 at times, that there is an indication on the form when you get tested that now you're supposed to quarantine until you get the test result. So I think that's the type of quarantine in this case, and I think that there is a possible solution to that. So I think, again, the board is not going to vote on this until next board meeting, and I will check with Chief Holloway on that, because that rule, as far as I understand it, is in place because the vast majority of test events require someone who gets tested to either have symptoms or live with someone who is tested positive or has been diagnosed. And so in those cases, it makes perfect sense to get tested and then be in quarantine because you have symptoms or you've been in close contact with someone. However, I think the type of testing that we would want to see for school staff before the holidays would be more the widespread community testing where anyone can come. And in fact, one of the testing events last week was changed from one requiring symptoms, so all the forms are the same, to actually anyone could show and be tested. And in those cases, when someone comes without any symptoms and simply wants to make sure that as they travel, because of the possibility of being asymptomatic, that they want to get that test done, then in that case, a quarantine really isn't indicated because they've neither been exposed nor have been, have had any symptoms. So I will check with Chief Holloway whether that can be clarified and whether that can be the approach. And I will also check to see whether we can make increased testing available for schools so that, that may be an option. Again, many of the people that tested over the last week, I believe there were somewhere near 3,000 tests just in a week, were college students because they were required to have a negative test before they could travel to their home state. And so I will check with Chief Holloway whether there could be some expanded testing for schools. He's offered that previously. And so maybe we can work in that direction and then avoid that so that this would not be a test where that type of quarantine is required. And then, those days would still be available for people to be in school, especially since it's a block that's really at the end of a stretch of school days. So there isn't a week and then we come back for 2 days. It's simply that block in December. And so I think if we can find the compromise there, then I think both of the objectives could be achieved.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Where are we at on teachers teaching both in the hybrid and the in-person and hybrid or virtual? You understand my question? Like, do we have a lot of CTE teachers teaching both in the Learning Academy as well as in-person classes?
I don't know the specific percentage. I don't know, Mr. Fitzgerald, what would you say in CTE, student teachers teaching both?
But we have at least a handful of teachers who have more than 4 classes realistically because they have virtual and in-person classes that they have to deal with, correct?
Thank you.
Thank you.
High school course offerings, Mr. Fitzgerald.
Chair Falk, school board members, and Dr. Scheichel. Each year, the school board approves courses for the upcoming school year. That would be the 21-22 school year. Can you believe that? 21-22? It doesn't sound right. But we have a number of new courses, and I got to tell you, I was watching Beth Harder's presentation a minute ago, and it was upbeat and positive and it really made me think about how can I make this upbeat and positive too? And I can, because I am excited with the new course offerings that we have for this year. I really am. And you know, a lot of us, I guess we kind of get tied up in COVID, and we don't realize there's a whole lot of work going on behind the scenes, planning for next year and for upcoming activities. So with that, I'm going to really talk to you about some exciting classes that we want to propose for next year. The first one is a result of a lot of hard work. One of our teachers, Owen Longacre at Spotswood High School, a social studies teacher, served on the state subcommittee, Governor Northam's committee for African American education, the possibility of it. And Bo Dickinson, our social studies supervisor, certainly was very influential in all that. So with that in mind, the social studies curriculum would like to offer for next year African American history, which would be a 1-credit elective, and that would be for grades 9 through 12. It could be taught to any of our students. So we're really excited about that. We think that has can do a lot to help with what's going on in our society right now. Just information and hopefully making folks look in a new, diverse way. In career and technical education, one of my favorite subjects, Beth, we have a number of new courses too. Advanced entrepreneurship is one of those courses. We offered entrepreneurship last year. 2 of our schools are actually getting ready to teach that entrepreneurship 1 next semester. We've gotten a lot of enthusiasm about that course, and entrepreneurship 2, or advanced entrepreneurship, would allow students to complete the sequence in that curriculum. Aerospace technology 2 is another course offering we hope to offer for next year. We're offering Aerospace Technology 1 at 2 of our schools. Enrollment is very high. We're starting to develop some really good partnerships with Dynamic Aviation in our area, as well as Blue Ridge Community College for some possibilities there. So we'd like to offer that second-year course to complete that sequence also. Now, Massanutten Technical Center has some course offerings that we would like to kind of change and add. We've had architecture and interior design for a number of years at MTC. The state has renamed some of those courses drafting, and we want to add a 3rd year to that course. So you'll see in the course catalog that you've been provided that we have changed the name to Drafting 1, 2, 3, although in a program of studies, it's also going to show architecture and interior design as part of that in a subtitle, if that's approved. Building Management 3 has been we're super excited about, because we've had a lot of our special needs students enroll in that program, been very successful in transitioning into jobs following school. So we'd like to add a 3rd year of that at MTC. So we're excited. And then the last one at MTC is Cybersecurity Network Systems. That's a 3rd year course that would be designed primarily for seniors that will finish out that course offering sequence and hopefully allow students to get some credentials, earn some credentials that are highly desirable in the computer world right now. Also, you'll note in your course catalog that music has a name change. We'd like to change that name of Beginning Band to Introduction to Band, just for a little more clarity in that. Right, Beth? And so I think that's kind of neat. And also, another course that I think is really one of the most important courses that we're adding in here is Teachers for Tomorrow 2. Last year, we added Teachers for Tomorrow 1. You know, in the past, we haven't advocated for our own profession through a course, and now we can do that. We know there's a teacher shortage, so we'd like to add the 2nd year of that course also. That will help complete a sequence. Also in the packet, you're going to see that there's an updated list of offerings from Virtual Virginia and Edgenuity to include a number of classes that haven't been available before, and we seek your approval for that so students can enroll for a number of different reasons in those classes, especially now if need be. Any questions about our proposal for course offerings for next year? And this is for just your information tonight.
Mr. Fitzgerald, which of the courses that are listed that you spoke about in the beginning, which ones are semester and which ones are full year?
Okay, so all of these courses that I mentioned are full year courses, no semester courses, unless, of course, we would keep the 4x4, and then you'd get a year's worth of work in a semester.
Have you removed any classes?
So we talked about removing a couple classes. And the problem with removing classes, when we start looking at that, all of the schools offer all of the classes, right? They're on the list. That's something we do. And then we teach them based on sign-up. So some courses don't make every year, some courses make every other year, that type of thing. We thought about pulling a couple out, especially tech ed courses in the CTE area, but we didn't because a couple of the schools are in a little bit of a transition, new teachers, that type of thing. So we're leaving them on the books. We think that would be best for this year and then reevaluate next year.
I think one of the nicest features is that we don't see 2020 on that calendar anymore.
Absolutely. That's what I'm very excited. 2021 and 22. It sounds really good.
And maybe for your presentation at the next board meeting, you could have props like for aerospace or engineering. You could fly a drone or something. Yeah.
And I have one more thing to add, if you don't mind, since we're on positive notes right now. I know that Ms. Lohr said a few minutes ago we got some Ag in the Classroom scholarships. I just got to throw this in real quick. The Blue Ridge Pathway scholarships were also just announced within the last couple of weeks. And those are for CTE and counseling. They can be used for career education. We, Rockingham County, turned in 48 grants. This is a regional thing of 77 total grants. Our teachers turned in 48 of them. That includes Augusta, Stanton, Waynesboro, Harrisonburg, right? We earned $41,000, or were awarded, I should say, $41,973. By far the lion's share of that money went to our teachers. And I think that's really a good testament about what I said before. There's a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't see, but it's just another testament our teachers are really, really engaged with what they're doing. Any other questions? Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Dr. Scheichel.
In your materials, you have two possible drafts for the school board meeting schedule for 2021. And in the past, we had talked a number of times about potentially meeting at a central location. I know Ms. Woodrum is getting tired of that central location being Rockingham Academy. We've really appreciated it. One of the key benefits has been that we've been able to adjust the technology, that the audio is better. We have additional tools at our disposal when there's a more permanent setup. And the board has always been reluctant to say, we will meet at one location for every meeting, because there's such an enormous benefit of being in our schools. And and every time we've raised that, the voice from the board has been very clear. We want to be in buildings. And so there are two drafts, again, in your materials. One is a draft it's draft A, that includes just a traditional schedule like we've always had. So the two meetings, and they are all in school buildings. There is, however, also a draft B, and that would be a compromise between the two positions. So there would be one business meeting at a central location. It could potentially be the board meeting room at the county government office, and we've checked there, and for the most part, those days are available. There are some days where the voter registrar has that room, and so we could make adjustments there. But there would be one business meeting at a central location that would allow Mr. Perkins to set up and use that technology, and we can potentially add additional benefits like we've tried here with closed captioning or the like, and then make those meetings available. But then the second meeting of the month would be at a school. So that means fewer schools would host us each year, but over time, each school would get their turn, and we would just change those meetings to a meeting where school presentations would take place, where character counts winners, and all the awards that we present and the presentations we have could take place. And so that would be more school-based and allow the community to be there. And again, in a desire to have the same number of awards, we would simply just double up that and have others from that area also receive their awards. So those are the two drafts, and we felt that this was a good approach to have options for the board, and for the board to have a conversation either tonight or at the next board meeting when this is for action, or both. And if you have any questions, I will refer you to Ms. Bocock, who's done, as always, a magnificent job putting these drafts together. Now, if you have any questions, we'll be glad to answer those.
So if we look at draft B, which is the business meeting / every other meeting, we would use that for a lot of our policy work and some of the other things that we need to do. And then the meetings where we go to the school would be presentations, and then also when we give out awards and all of that.
That's correct. And as much as I would hope that the public, after the awards, would remain for our discussions of the policy manual and some of the other things that we deal with, as you know, in many meetings we actually take deliberate breaks after the awards to allow those who want to leave to not have to sneak out. And so in that spirit, I think, again, there's a lot of business to be done when we talk about action items such as the bills and the like. And again, the policy revisions, the public generally comes to the meetings in person, to see the presentations related to what's going on in the buildings and the students. And so yes, during the business meeting, we would consolidate that from both meetings and take care of business there. Certainly open to the public. And so those business meetings would also be streamed so that, those who are interested in maybe just 5 minutes of that meeting could watch that part. It could be recorded and so on. And then the school meetings would be more kind of the productions of sometimes we have some performances, sometimes we have, videos about what the school has done, and then especially the awards, the Inspire Awards, for our educators, and so on.
So included would be presentations in the second meeting in the schools would include presentations such as we have seen this evening with the fine arts.
Absolutely, yes. Anything that relates to the instructional program where we highlight what's going on in the buildings educationally, those would take place in the schools because, again, that's what the community, I think, wants to see and is more interested in attending in person. Of course, there would still be, if we had topics to discuss that are of great importance to the community in terms of, some of the conversations we've had about more hands-on learning, about those kinds of topics, then certainly, even though those might be decisions about policy, we can certainly shift those to larger venues to allow the public to participate and make their voice heard.
Would we continue for all of the meetings to be live streamed, all of them?
It would be more difficult, I think, at the schools to always have that set up. There would be sufficient space, for people to attend in person, but the business meetings certainly we would attempt to live stream and handle that way.
So do you think on January 25th we'll be able to do some Inspire Awards and get back to those kinds of things? Or is that wishful thinking?
Nope, I think that is certainly feasible. Again, we don't know what the restrictions will be, right? So right now, there are restrictions of gatherings. However, board meetings really aren't affected by that. So, but of course, we would set an example of what it means to have a meeting under the spirit of the executive orders. And so I wouldn't foresee that we just cram people into Elkton Middle School, right? But with proper social distancing and mask requirements, we could certainly have more than 25 people responsibly in the auditorium and maybe even feature our air purification systems to make sure that the air quality is as good as it can be in that meeting space.
because personally, as a board member, I'm much more interested in celebrating our students and our teachers than where we meet. I don't care where we meet, but I want to get back to celebrating the important parts of Rockingham County Public Schools. So. And I would like to thank everyone who's worked so hard to make this possible. The live streaming has been a huge help, and I really appreciate all your work in that. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think you would have agreement from everyone that those are the meetings that make us smile the most, is when we get to see what happens in schools and all the awards and really inspirational stories that we get, and the school presentations, that have now focused always on what students do, that just, makes us want to be in education and are so proud of the schools that we have.
Board members, we have several information items.
You have your attendance report for October and information about the VSBA Capital Conference that will take place virtually January 25th and 26th in your materials. And I believe if you want to attend that conference, you would let Ms. Bocock know so she can register you for that conference.
Next item on the agenda is school board questions or statement. I'd like to start again with Ms. Lohr.
Where are we at with SOLs? Do we think that we will be having those this year?
The state superintendent just recently issued some waivers for SOL, so there will be some flexibility there. We will, as much as possible, use performance-based assessments as part of our locally verified credits approach at the high school level. There now is some flexibility where students don't have to first attempt an SOL test. It used to be to attempt the test, you had to score between 375 and 399. That's now down to, so where students do take it, it's down to 350, but in our case, for most tests now, we will actually be able to not even have the student attempt the test and go straight to that locally verified credits process. And so there's also some flexibility at the lower grade level. So where possible, we'll take advantage of that. Those waivers were just issued last Friday, so we'll make sure we work through all of those. One of the important ones, U.S. history, is one that Mr. Dickinson has asked for some clarification, but as far as we understand it, that flexibility will exist. It exists for writing, so students may not have to attempt those now. Can we offer SOL tests? We can, but certainly, what we've always attempted to move towards our performance-based assessments, and so that's going to be the focus for us.
So our earliest testing definitely wouldn't be until March.
I do believe there's some testing in the fall, and so again, but that doesn't necessarily always mean that it's the SOL test. So there's some that we can offer. Again, that's an option, but because we are on a 4x4 schedule, there are classes that are finishing up in the fall. That doesn't mean we then want to have the students wait until the spring to take that, because there's a big gap. Then, there's seen that in the past with AP testing, where that can sometimes be an issue. When the AP test is administered late in the school year and the student took the corresponding class in the fall. So there'll be some testing related to fall classes. But the waivers that the state superintendent issued, apply all year.
And I just want to thank Beth Harder and her team for all their work, and everybody who's wearing masks and doing everything they can. I want to have sports, I want to have musicals, I want to have prom. So please, small groups, and wear your masks. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Lohr. Ms. Reed?
Thank you, Mr. Falk. I think I will pass for tonight.
All right. Dr. McQuilkin?
Thank you, Mr. Falk. I'm sure that after we hear the results of the survey as to the high school students, I'm looking positively that we're going to be going back in second semester, that you will let us know the percentages of students who will be in person, in the hybrid mode, and those who are in the home learning academy.
Absolutely. Now, I do want to make it clear, just like in the summer, because there was some misunderstanding when we sent out the survey and said, do you want to participate in person or do you want to participate virtually, that's not a vote on what mode of learning we will offer. So in the summer, when we asked that, 86% or so, I believe, in the initial one said in person, and then we went all virtual early on based on public health conditions. And a lot of people then complained and said, well, we voted, and then you didn't do what 86% said. What that is taking inventory of the preference that families have if we can offer in-person instruction. So if we are able, and we are hopeful, again, if the community follows the strategies and we're in a good place public health-wise, that we can bring high school students in person, then that will be the preference under those circumstances. So that doesn't mean, again, if 80% select that they want to be on the AB hybrid schedule, that if we have to close down or if the governor closes schools, that we can still offer the hybrid, just because 80% wanted that. So, but we will certainly, we're hopeful that we can do that, and I will certainly update the board on, the selections that we see.
Mr. Breeden.
Dr. Scheichel, I'd want to thank you for the amount of time you're putting in to stay on top of the issues confronting us with this COVID-19 from all different points of view of what and what is not permissible, because they're not always consistent, as we all know. You gave us a presentation tonight that demonstrated how drastically things have changed within a week and a half to 2 weeks. So I just want to say to you tonight that it is not this board member's expectation that on November the 23rd you should be able to tell me where we'll be on January 25th.
Thank you. In fact, as we were talking, I received an email from Dr. Cornigan, and she said, as a point of clarification, school divisions should consider virtual learning where community spread is great and where if mitigation strategies are not followed as they should be. Other options would be to bring the youngest learners back and have others virtual, but it would also be acceptable if mitigation strategies are truly consistently followed to have students in the building with an understanding that based on public health data and, for example, hospitalization data, that very quick changes to a virtual environment may be necessary. And but again, that is kind of the option we do have, to be good about those strategies, to follow them relentlessly, and to have the students in the buildings as they've shown they can be. And what we have to avoid is kind of that COVID fatigue, that mask fatigue, where literally the barrier comes down and things will happen very quickly, and we don't want to see that. So the more we follow that, the longer we can have our students in school, and hopefully through the rest of the year, and then have a little bit more normalcy, hopefully next school year. I do want to mention two things. One, I want to extend my appreciation again to our funding body, the Board of Supervisors, for making it possible that school staff receive their mid-year cost of living adjustment. So I want to express my thanks here as well. And then I do want to mention that every year students in our high schools can apply for, can submit an application for the Presidential Scholar competition. And so we send our top students to Region 5. And Region 5, just to give you an indication, is comprised of Bedford County, Campbell County, Lynchburg, Amherst County, Nelson County, Rockbridge County, Lexington, Buena Vista, Bath County, Highland County, Augusta County, Stanton, Waynesboro, Albemarle County, Charlottesville, Fluvanna County, Louisa County, Greene County, Rockingham County, and Harrisonburg City. So it's not just 2 or 3 school divisions. And Michael Creel from East Rockingham High School was selected as the winner in that region, in that entire region. And so his application is moving forward to the state level. So congratulations to Michael Creel from East Rock.
Thank you, Dr. Scheichel. Board members, we have reason to enter into closed meeting. May I have a motion to that?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board enter into a closed meeting to discuss and consider the following pursuant to the provisions of Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1, personnel, specific public officers, appointees, or employees for the purpose of considering such individual's assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, salary, or resignation.
Thank you, Mr. Breeden. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. The motion is passed unanimously. We are now in closed meeting. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending and participating in the meeting. Have a happy Thanksgiving.